picked it up. Oh, man. All right. Top 5 coaches who have cooled their seat for now. Number 5, signature win, beating a top 15 team, Eli Drinkwitz. You just heard Mickey talking about it with the thicker kicker there, but Eli Drinkwitz has gotten his team a signature win. Now, how do you build on it? Their quarterback played really well in that game, even though they got a little banged up. So we'll see. Can they build on this moving forward? I like Eli Drinkwitz. I think I like him because of the trash talk between him and Dan Mullen a couple of years ago. They went back and forth, but I hope he makes it. I hope that he makes it good. But Missouri they're kind of caught in this middle ground of they didn't build on their great runs in the Big 12 or their early good runs in the SEC. They're just caught in this middle ground of weird right now. But Eli Drinkwitz got a signature win for his program.
Yeah, I don't know how much he was ever really on there, but I think, had things started to slide, he definitely would have found himself entering that territory. So I think he cut it off at the pass, at least for right now. I think he's got some big recruiting battles that he could still win that would add even more momentum. The big 5-star Ryan Wingo, wide receiver. Mm-hmm. I think Texas is a favorite there as well. But, it's like you got Luther Burden and you got these other guys that you've been able to land. So, that was huge for them to get that W, to do so in front of a home crowd and to beat an old rival and a highly rated one at that. So, and to do it in the dramatics that they did, like I did I call it Mojo rankings because I do a little bit different than just straight up power rankings. I take a little more into account than just like I watch these power rankings. It's just the standings basically, and I put a little bit more thought into it than that. And I didn't knock K-State down very much. Like the only reason I would is because they're just so banged up. If Will Howard's hurt, then okay, I'll probably knock him down an extra peg. But they lost on a 61-year-old walk-off field goal on the road against an SEC team. Like I'm not going to really punish them too much for that. But we'll learn a lot more about them this weekend. But yeah,
is that as much how they lost it, or that nobody else around them or below them was able to push
both.
up?
I'm not going to just throw BYU above them just because BYU's 3-0. Do I think they're better than K-State right now?
No,
I don't. No. Do I think that who's another 3-0? Do I think Kansas is better than Kansas State right now? I'm not sure. I'm not ready to make that move just yet. So that's where I'm coming from. You can lose a game and still stay where you are.
Yeah.
It's a 61-year-old walk-off field goal on the road, but no, that was a huge win for Missouri and great for them. And he's definitely cooled off any potential warmth there.
And here's for Kansas State: you don't even try as hard to block that field goal because the last thing you want to do is give them 15 yards.
Right. Yeah.
To if you're already worried, like if you see the guy trotting out at 61 yards and the coach is confident he can make it from 61 and do that, and
I didn't think he was going to get it there.
No.
And he not only got it there, he got it there with plenty of just steam on it.
You're gonna probably go, all right, look, we got to just make sure we don't commit a penalty here and go to overtime, because if you're confident he can make it from 61, then he can make it from 45.
Yeah.
So that's what
or
you don't want to do.
have a kick 6 situation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Number 4, Jeff Hafley at Boston College. Now, look, I know that they lost last week, but they have got some athletic talent there that they haven't had in a while. Their quarterback, Castellanos, can move around. And he was recruited several places, including Florida State, who I think he had a huge chip on his shoulder about this. Florida State told him he is an athlete. You're not necessarily a quarterback. You're not necessarily something else, but you are here as an athlete. And he bet on himself and went to Boston College and had 400 total yards against the number 4 team in the country last week. And if not for their immense amount of penalties, they might have ruined FSU's season. But I think Jeff Hafley, even at a loss last week, cooled his seat a little bit at Boston College because he's got some guys coming in that weren't there before.
Yeah, Castellanos was a UFC guy or UCF guy. UFC guy, that'd be something, wouldn't it? Yeah. UCF guy, as they just continue to sprout quarterbacks like it's going out of style. But he had a great performance, and that was one that I saw a lot of last weekend. That, of all the games that were being played, I know they weren't the big, sexy games, but of all the interesting stories that ended up popping up, I didn't necessarily have Boston College and Thomas Castellanos being like as much in the headlines as just about anything else. So yeah, they've got something to chew on and something to build from. I think there at BC.
That last penalty.
I mean, it was.
They're going to get the ball back.
Yeah, they get the ball back.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just...
I hated to end like that for if you're Boston College. For Florida State, it just ended the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was... I can't imagine what you were going through with that, but that was interesting, and it definitely has shown I think, since the LSU win, Florida State's not quite as much of a sure thing as we thought that they were after beating LSU. They're just, man, they're.
Well, I mean, it wasn't, and I think it wasn't just LSU. Like, they went out and they drilled Southern Miss.
Yeah.
And Southern Miss is an okay team. They're not like great, but they're okay. They drilled them, which is what they used to do when they were winning conferences. So you think like, oh, hey, but look, 2013, when they won the national title, Boston College had them down like 21-3, and then Jameis, became Jameis. I think he threw a Hail Mary as the half ended, and that kind of killed it. But, yeah, it's always a tough place to play for them.
And that's why when people just say you're going to run the table, there's always a certain team that just annoys the hell out of you, and you got to play them on the road or it's bad weather.
Here's the other thing about Boston College. Whenever Florida State comes there,
we don't need no more Florida State stuff.
They have some sort of like special day. It's like the emotional day where everybody has the same shirts and jerseys and all that stuff. Anyway, it just always how it is. No,
is that why the game was close?
No, but like the fans are like extra keyed up.
Well, because of that.
Florida
State.
But even they throw on like there was the 9/11 thing this week, and so they had this. Anyway.
Everybody did that.
Yeah, but I'm just telling you. Number 3,
by the way, Boston College though they are 1-2, so let's not like pump them up too much. But at least there was some promise that they almost upended Florida State.
Yeah. Number 3, Mike Bloomgren at Rice. Look, you win against Houston. I mean, and there have been big calls for Mike Bloomgren's job. Big calls for Mike Bloomgren's job, and he beats Houston and may have paused that for a little while. Rice is they're trying to make obviously they're trying to make moves. They're trying to be better than they have been for a long time. It's been very a moribund program. You can win at high level academic schools if you have the right guy, but Mike Bloomgren beating Houston, I think, cooled his seat for now.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we talked to Taylor. We didn't bring up Rice this time around, but we've definitely talked to him in the past. I know last year it was very much a dire situation. It appeared like with his job, and he really needed to finish strong. And then he's back and don't know quite what to expect, and they get beat up by Texas, which is what you'd expect. But yeah, they've then since won a couple games and beaten Houston why this has cooled off significantly, because that was a step forward in the right direction a long time since they'd won that rivalry game. And, JT Daniels is there and gives them a little bit more oomph at quarterback. And you got McCaffrey. And, yeah, they're not a team that's going to probably, go and compete to win, the conference or anything. But being 2-1 at this stage, and your only loss being to what is now the number 3 team in the country that you're always going to plan on losing to in the opener, I think that they've rebounded nicely from that and do have a little something headed in the proper direction now, as opposed to kind of what you've got was a marriage that was coming to a close late last year when we were talking to Taylor.
Yeah. Number 2, Neal Brown. Look, you beat Pitt and you're at West Virginia. Everybody can be quiet for a little while. And look, if he goes out and beats Tech, then that's another big win on the thing. And you can maybe he's gotten a handle on this thing, which he hasn't for the first couple years that he's been there. Maybe they're starting to turn it around. We'll see against Tech. Both these coaches, I think, need this one kind of in different ways, but pretty badly to get their seasons on track. Especially Tech needs to match the hype a little bit.
Yeah,
but
it'll be interesting.
I talked about this all offseason, though, but just the offseason hype and kind of what it creates. And yeah, I mean, I noticed Joey a couple of sessions ago. You could see him kind of getting annoyed by some of the doubting of how they're using the quarterbacks and, things like that. So I think there's definitely some pressure on Tech. I think some of the pressure has lessened on Neal Brown, where at least for this week he can kind of just play free and easy because he's won a couple of games to sort of take that heat off. And so now it's like you're expected still to lose to Tech, but now you have confidence that maybe you can beat them because they're not, world beaters by any means. You're at home. You've beaten 2 rivals. You played Penn State. So I think that or you've beaten 1 rival. You played Penn State. So I think you played a really good team, and you kind of know where you are at this point. I think you stack up relatively well with Texas Tech. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's beyond, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Texas is going to roll in there and beat them in Morgantown. So if they can somehow be 3-1, I mean, that would be incredible. But even at 2-2, I do think that just beating Pitt was a huge step forward for them. Now, can they do anything offensively outside of C.J. Donaldson running the ball? I mean, can Nico Marchiol actually throw the ball around, that's what I'm interested in seeing more. Garrett Green, that wasn't his strength either, before he got dinged up. So I just don't know offensively, can the defense just carry the load for them and C.J. Donaldson in the run game and I guess just pop a play here and there because they don't really have a passing game to speak of, and I just don't know how sustainable that is. But they are in a better spot than many could have predicted at this point, where they most likely were looking at 1-2 and then running into the Big 12.
Yeah. I tell you what, I was like so many West Virginia fans are they're uptight, their anxiety, and Neal Brown was just again very emphatic when we were at Big 12 Media Days. Good win for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 1, Billy Napier.
Oh yeah,
and he was not even a full. I think you get the point where you get crazy and you just start throwing money around, and then you look around and go, hey, why don't we? And look, that might be part of the reason that Florida fell behind in facilities, because they were playing some buyouts because they kept firing coaches. And, other than, look, Steve Spurrier, no buyout. He left to go to Washington. And Urban Meyer retired, so there was no buyout there. And it might have been like the other way around, because Ohio State hired him probably while he was still under contract with Florida. And so they were okay there, but they fired, other than that, they fired Ron Zook, they fired Jim McElwain, they fired Will Muschamp, they fired Dan Mullen. That's a lot of coaches you fired in a decade or so. Yeah, so in 20 years, so just say 20 years, you fired 4 coaches. So you've been paying a lot of buyouts, and then you're probably going to have to do it again if you get kind of greedy and don't let Billy Napier get where he's going. But a big win over Tennessee and a thumping, shows that he might have a little intensity there, or we don't really know what that means about the rest of the SEC East. But I do think not letting Tennessee end their losing streak the first chance they got against you in the Swamp was a huge thing for Billy Napier.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I'll slightly disagree with you, I just don't ever I never considered him on the hot seat to begin with, really. I just, it's too early to consider him, not even halfway through the second year of already being in a position to get fired. After year 2, okay, you start to have those conversations, especially if it's sliding south. But it just felt a little bit too early to me. But I know why there's the conversation of just like, oh, crap, is this going to be the guy or is it not? And, oh, boy, if it's not, they're in a big world of trouble. But I do think that beating Tennessee, who's clearly not exactly what they were last year, and that's fine because they lost some great talent, I do think that soothes a lot of souls and soothes a lot of, feelings about just, how they've looked and how they've gone about handling things, and to be – pretty clearly the better team last weekend, and to have some big performances from the likes of ETN and company. That did them a world of good.
Yeah, absolutely it did. And I just there were a lot of things going on. Look, Urban Meyer's clearly on a rehab tour and did a documentary about how great it was when he was at Florida. And I kind of felt like maybe he's trying to sneak his way back into that job, and that would make a lot of sense to me.
Urban would sneak.
And then you have the whole debacle with Jaden Rashada, which was not Billy Napier's fault. But when money people get crazy, then the guys who's they're not going to take nobody involved in that's going to be like, yeah, we messed this up. They're going to be like, Billy, how did you let us mess this up? You said you had the money. You didn't. You screwed me, not the other way around. So
yeah, no, that was a nice win for them. That jumped out. I'm not surprised Florida played well, and not even if they would have won the game, but they dominated that game for the most part. And good for Neal Brown, Drinkwitz with a huge win for Missouri. As their schedule only gets tougher